Anthony Moyles, how are things?
I'm good on. I'm good. Yeah, certainly was.
Should he be
He
jumping
sounded
out?
happy.
He did. Should he be jumping out of his skin this morning?
I wouldn't be jumping out of it just yet. I have to temper it a little bit. I felt, I thought. Listen, of course, they were full value for their win. Okay, but Mayo were definitely tired. I was thinking about the game after 15, 20 minutes, and I was kind of thinking, like, really, why did I get kind of caught into the Venus flytrap that was being set by Dar O'Shea and various others? Now, I'm not going to mention you, but there was this kind of feeling of Mayo. And there was always going to be a kick out of Kerry. When you have Dar O'Shea kind of questioning you and questioning David Moran that he was being bullied, etc., you were always going to get it. And right from the off, you could see the tone being set, right from the throw-in. It wasn't just a little bit of handbags. There was most definite kind of, listen, we're standing our ground today. And you could see the intent from the first 10, 15 minutes, first 5 minutes, really, where they just drove at Mayo. They took them on from every single angle. And I think they just outfought Mayo, but they also tactically kind of outthought Mayo. And the funny thing about the Super 8s, much the same as the qualifiers, games can be won and lost in those first 15, 20 minutes. And after the first 15, 20 minutes, Mayo had a mountain to climb, and it really was all over.
So what was it about those first 15, 20 minutes that gave Kerry that huge lead?
A couple of things. I thought Gainey was unbelievable for Kerry. I see people talking about O'Brien and Clifford, but if you watch Gainey, like the first 6 or 7 scores, he had a hand or part in each of them. I thought he led the line brilliantly. He drifted out at times and then created a space for Clifford inside. He attacked them 3 or 4 times and got fouled for easy frees. I thought he was a real handful. And it's his first game now in a while where he has really stood out and showed his leadership there as kind of one of the elder statesmen, I suppose, of that forward line. I think, people are going on about, more in the midfield. He was on Vaughan for a lot of it. And the Mayo kick-out wasn't that bad. They went short a good few times. When they came under pressure, then they tried to go long. And it was just kind of like Moran kicked an unbelievable score and then plucked one out of the air over Vaughan's head right after, and they got another score. But Mayo misfired big time on with regard to their game plan, because I think they tried to expose the Kerry full back line, and they weren't expecting Enright to be sitting in and creating this kind of bit of a shield. And he was in there and he was doubling up and he cut out a number of balls that were kind of misplaced. And the amount of balls that Mayo gave away in that final third, for a team of their experienced, the massive experience that they have, they seemed rushed as soon as they got past midfield. They were trying to force it. They were trying to get balls into Cillian O'Connor and Cohen, and it just wasn't working. And instead of running the ball and trying to go at the heart of Kerry, which is where I still think there's a few question marks at Kerry, and they continue to try and kick these balls, and it didn't work out for them at all. Some of their main players, like Kevin McLaughlin, I think the first time Kevin McLaughlin touched the ball was about the 9th minute. He got on a ball nearly in his own half and popped the hand pass. Like, he was non-existent for a fella who was so important to them, and so important to their tempo as well. Kerry did a very good job on him. They obviously decided, right, we're going to man mark him and just take him out of the game, and they did that. So, for all of what Kerry did in those first 15, 20 minutes, which was very impressive, Mayo still had chances and still had plenty of ball, but kicked an awful lot of it away. And when they kicked it away or gave it away, Kerry punished them.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, and that's not like downplaying expectations or anything like that. I mean, when loose ball is there, defenders still have to go and win it, but ultimately it wasn't great distribution into the full forward line, a full forward line that doesn't have a lot of pace anyway. Perhaps the jury is still out. I think definitely the jury is still out on how Kerry actually defend this, not least because, as you mentioned, the running game for Mayo didn't get going at all. Like, why was that? What was the biggest reason? Was it because of that midfield platform that Kerry just didn't allow them to have?
Yeah, possibly that. I also just think that, they may have thought on coming into the game, listen, we can expose the full back line of Kerry, so let's get the ball in early and let's get it in as often as possible. Let's try and put some diagonal balls in. And they tried to do that. Now, they got some success out of it. But then, Cohen missed a really bad one with his left foot. I don't know if you remember that. He gets the ball onto his left foot and he miskicks it straight into the keeper. Cillian O'Connor missed a really bad one just after that. Cohen then comes in off his right and balloons one up into the air wide. All at vital times, all when they needed to just stay in touch. Vaughan came through then on one after Moran's one. He comes through, he has the ball in his hands, it looks like it's a goal chance, he ends up kind of spilling it. He did it again after that. But if you actually rewind and watch that, outside him, both Kevin McLaughlin and Cillian O'Connor are outside him about 20-25 yards away from when he gets that ball, and no one shows any real desire to kind of get towards him. No one says, okay, he might get turned here, so when he does get turned, I'm going to make a bit of a move to try and get in support of him, even if they're marked by Kerry lads. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of standing up by Mayo men, and that, I think, tiredness is a question mark. There's no doubt about it. If you look at a lot of Kerry's attacks, Clifford was kind of one-on-one with men. So all he had to do was kind of jink inside, make a bit of space for himself, and then he was clipping the ball over the bar. And I was amazed at the half-forward line of Mayo weren't kind of seeing this danger, and as soon as the ball was being broken down, they weren't just getting back to say, right, I'm getting back to Clifford. I'm going to give my cornerback a dig out here. I'm going to give Harrison a dig out. I'm going to give whoever else in there a dig out, and I'm going to try and double up on this man. So that comes from maybe a lack of desire, but also just a bit of a mental fatigue. And I definitely thought, if you watch it, there's some small little passages of play in that first 15-20 minutes, which just gives you a bit of an insight to the fact that they were probably just a bit tired. And I'm not, that's not an excuse, right? And that's not just a very glib thing to say, because people say, oh, they were tired. Like, you could just see that they were a little bit mentally fatigued, and that extra bit of determination and hard running, Kerry had it and they didn't have it.
Well, let's hear from James Horan, because the Mayo boss was speaking to Mortras in the aftermath of yesterday's defeat.
James Horan, sometimes there's nothing you can say except what went wrong, because I suppose Mayo you were your fantastic best as usual, but a little bit down, I suppose. But Kerry were just sublime.
Kerry were very good today, as you'd expect, down in Killarney in a championship match. They've been preparing for that for a long time. They were very good, but on the flip side, we were way below where we can be. So it always looks like there's a big gap when that's the case. But they were full value for the win today. They kept us at arm's length. We kept plodding away, but we were half a yard off all through the game. So Kerry were deserved winners.
It's funny when we were talking about how sometimes you get a run, you got momentum. We saw that with Mayo during the summer, and we were saying last night to Anthony Cunningham, the loss of games, did that make a difference? And his answer was, well, games always help. So it just goes to show, sometimes I think, do we even know what we're talking about until the game actually happens?
Yeah, that's football. You're sometimes momentum is good, and then if you lose, it's because you were tired. But no, we were poor today. But we'll have a quick look at a few of the things, but we have to move on straight away. A game next weekend, so there's no point dallying over too long.
How do you do that?
You train during the week and away you go. We'll have a look at it, because even from the start we were just a bit off. So we'll look at it, but very quickly move on.
Yeah, I'll put the same question to you, Anthony, that Mortras put to James there at the end. How do you do that? What do you change in the space of 1 week?
Oh, probably not a whole pile on, really. You don't just rip the copybook up because of, a bad performance that, as he says rightly there, they were just off. I think there was a lot of talk coming into this game, and there was a lot of talk about the build-up, and as I said, a lot of people got caught in it. And it is interesting, one man's kind of, there's a lot of momentum with the team, is another man's, well, actually they could be tired and they could be fatigued and they could be really down to the depths of the panel. And all of those question marks were there. They have unearthed guys, and they have guys in the panel who stepped up, to be fair, over the last while. They didn't really step up yesterday. And again, where you needed them to really step up and take that Kerry challenge on, they didn't. Look, Killarney is a very, very tough place to go. As Mike Quirk says, there are 26, 27 years, whatever it is, that record. That is a massive amount of history. Kerry footballers are massively proud. They were always going to bring it physically yesterday, whether Dara asked for it or not. Like, they were always going to bring it. They were always going to bring it tactically. And they were always going to try to get a really fast start. And that fast start really broke the back of Mayo. There was an audible, on 4 minutes, as I say, when Cohen kicked that really bad ball into the keeper's hand, there was an audible sigh in the stadium. You could sense it. It was kind of like, oh, because right then, literally 30, 40 seconds later, the ball goes down the field, a beautiful move. Clifford gets it, steps inside, bangs it over the bar. And it was kind of like, well, that's really the difference between these two teams today. One is just a little bit off it, and the other one is very much on it, especially from a forwards point of view. Do I think Kerry are the finished article? No, I don't. I still think there's question marks. And as I said, I still think there's question marks down the middle, the spine of that defence.
Do you think that the answer is potentially out there yesterday? Because, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems that it could be the answer, what they did yesterday. We just don't know it yet because Mayo were so poor and you can't really judge it on yesterday. Do you persevere with that exact same lineup, like Enright in that role in front of the full back line next week, just to kind of give it the full litmus test as to how effective it is?
I think it was very effective, and I think it did prevent that running down the middle. Although Mayo didn't really, until the second half, try to expose it. It pushed them out more left and right. But I think teams now will analyse that and they say, okay, well, if he's in there, where do we need to get the ball and where can we expose him? Enright is very, very good, a very good player, very, very strong physical player, but you know, if you talk to even Kerry people, they're quite worried. He gets a lot of fouls against him. He gets yellow cards quite easily. So he's a guy I'd be saying, well, actually, look, if you are, you got to go at him. You got to try and take this guy on. If he's standing in a central position as a kind of a second number 6, we have to try to expose him, go right down the gun at him, and make him have to actually use his body to tackle you. So, like. It's like everything, Owen, and this is a great thing about the Super 8s. You know, you're going to have to analyse exactly how they change things and try to say, okay, well, there's a bit of weakness here, there's a bit of weakness there. And on the flip side of the coin, you know, how do we defend up against Guinea and Clifford? How do we sort ourselves out? I didn't think James O'Donoghue was very good yesterday. I thought he was a bit off. I know he got a couple of scores, but of the two who were really, really impressive, well, the three really was O'Brien, Clifford, and Gainey. Like they were masterful yesterday, and they really took everything to Mayo.
Have we seen the template from Donegal then already this year, say the Tyrone game, where they can actually handle that? I mean, when they went to a blanket against Tyrone in that game, the McShane impact was completely taken out of that encounter. The thing is here, though, Kerry have a number of options. They have a number of direct options. Can they just apply that Tyrone template to Kerry next Sunday?
I think they can. Like, they impressed me against Meath, you know, because they were under pressure. Like, Meath had them in bother as well. Meath ran at them. They had fellas coming off the shoulder. They didn't really kick. They tried to kick in a bit more ball into the full forward line, Meath, and then have runners off. But, you know, Meath probably could have had one or two more goals, but Donegal could have had one or two more goals as well. Jamie Brennan blasted one or so over the bar. That was a great game, I have to say. It was a real humdinger, but Donegal impressed me. Like, at a moment in time when Meath went ahead, which unfortunately they could have had a goal before that with Shane McEntee's shot over the bar, and they could have tried to get 3 or 4 up. Donegal just closed the door. Like, they just slammed the door shut. Michael Murphy slammed it shut. And Meath have been priding themselves in this year on turning teams over, especially from a defensive point of view. But geez, like, they hardly turned Donegal over, because Donegal are unbelievably good at shifting the ball. They have fellas who run angles, forwards who run angles, Murphy runs angles, and they have McBurty just coming around on the loop constantly looking for those little passes. And it is so difficult to defend against, because they actually don't hold on to the ball. They very rarely bring the ball into tackle. And the only time they actually will carry ball if they're in space. But as soon as they get up into your opposition, you know, you're 40 metre, 50 metre out from goal, it's all really quick, intricate hand passing, angles, and then they get the right fellas on the ball to take the shots. Like, there was a score that Murphy got off his right foot in the first half, which was just, you know, if you could watch it again, there's about 4 different angles ran by guys He actually originally started to score, but then he ends up on the kind of stand side waiting, and then he comes in onto his right foot on a loop, gets the ball, bangs it over the bar, and it was so simple. And one thing I would say, Donegal were getting their scores easier than Meath yesterday, but Meath can be very, very proud of what they did, but that Donegal team are a serious unit.
What did Meath do to cause them that bit of trouble, that they got that 1 point lead at a big stage in the game?
Well, they had done extremely well first half. They had, I think, tagged a number of their main guys. Lavin was having a great game on Brennan inside. The Meath full back line had done well. The goal was just a slip by Conor McGill, really. He'd read it really well, got out in front. It was a bit of a killer goal, to be honest, because Meath were really competing well. But they came back again at it. Brian McMahon was having a ferocious game up front for them. Meath were a little bit reckless with some of their shooting, and like Mayo, again, the final ball in that final third was missing a little bit kind of some guys taking shots on which shouldn't have been taken on, and some guys trying passes and hand passes that just weren't there. When Meath actually started to control it a bit more, and they probably showed a bit of a template as well for other teams. They swung the ball left to right. They made the pitch big, and then they looked for runners coming really, really quick down the middle. And they attacked Donegal as well on that spine. And again, I think the 6 position and the 3 position for Donegal are a little bit suspect. And if I was coming up against them, I would be looking for a really hard running game coming in off the wings. Maybe a pop ball inside, but then have runners coming hard down that middle, kind of the 6th and 3 channel, because I think that's where Meath exposed them. And, bar a really brilliant tackle by Frank McLean. I don't know if you remember that one on Cillian O'Sullivan. People were saying it was the penalty, but it was absolutely a brilliant tackle. Like, that was at a vital time as well. If O'Sullivan had kind of got that bounce and passed the Donegal fellas, I think he would have slotted it. And it was a really good chance. And even the one prior to that, where they came in, the disallowed goal, again, they showed that hard running at that full back line, caused problems. So I think that's something that Donegal will be mindful of, and they'll definitely have to try and repair before the next day.
Well, for sure. I mean, any team that has designs on winning an All-Ireland championship and they have problems at 3 and 6, surely there's alarm bells ringing with that regard.
Yeah, there would be, but the alarm bells have been ringing there for a while. But what they seem to have been is that they're so adept. Like, I'll tell you what amazed me, Owen. The goalkeeper, Meath, I think Meath were really trying to press their kick out, but they hardly got a glove on them at times. Now, in the second half, Porrick Harnham won a few brilliant ones where Meath were really coming at them. But they have this unbelievable tactic, obviously, and strategy. And as soon as they concede a score, Patton has the ball down within probably 2 seconds and the ball is just gone. And I was watching it. The camera was actually brilliant yesterday on the TV, because it was showing Patton kicking from behind him. And what they do is they load up the right side. All the players go over from the midfield, from the centre of the pitch to the right side. They leave a load of space on the left, and then one of Murphy or someone else just basically darts out and he just clips it out in front of him. And once he has the 2 or 3 yards, and he's such a big man, he just wins it out in front, claims the mark, and away they go. But I have to say, the difference between the two teams massively yesterday. Never mind the last 6 or 7 minutes, because Meath were trying to come forward and look for goals. The real difference was at that spell between 55 and 60 minutes, the control that Donegal put on the ball, but for the previous 55 odd minutes was the kickouts. The difference in the kickouts were quite amazing. Meath were really struggling to get theirs, and that's not the goalkeeper's fault. It's the players out the pitch, understanding the zones and where the pressure is coming from. And Donegal were just like, I mean, they really were getting the ball back pretty much at their ease from kickouts, which is a big thing, and which is going to be a massive help for them come Croke Park. Yeah,
it certainly will be. Let's talk about what did happen at Croke Park on Saturday night. Dublin 5-18, Cork 1-17, and it's hard to kind of put it like this after conceding 5-18, but it seems that Cork come out of the game with a lot of credit and that they approached the game in a correct way.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's so disheartening. Like, you're thereabouts for 60 odd minutes. And it's funny, it was actually mentioned on the TV that it was actually at 61 minutes. I don't know if you remember, but Mark Collins missed a free. And you could kind of see again the Cork lads, there was kind of a bit of an exhalation of air. And literally from that moment on, Dublin just went bang, 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 a couple of goals. And it was like just in the blink of an eye, I think it was 2-2 to a point over about 3 or 4 minutes, and all of a sudden the game's over. Like the last goal was just, I think, just shows you why this team are just absolutely so good, because I think they've three of the best footballers, in the country playing at the moment. So they've Cluxton, they've McCaffrey, and they've Fenton. And if you watch the goal, Cluxton puts it down, he bangs a kick out to McCaffrey. McCaffrey wins it, takes it on. He has Philly McMahon on his right shoulder. McMahon is called for the ball. He ignores that, because usually actually he would slip a hand pass. He looks up, he puts this beautiful ball in over the defence onto Fenton, running at full pace. He just takes it, and he nearly takes the net off with the goal. And it was one of those times that he actually managed to get away from Maguire, because Maguire had a really good game on him. But it just shows you, like, this Dublin team are conditioned to play at that level for 90 minutes. Everyone else is trying to get to play against Dublin for 70 minutes. That's what they're trying to do. Cork managed it for 60. And after that, they were gone. They were absolutely blown out. There was guys pulling jerseys, just trying to stop men. You could see straight away that they were really just hanging on. Whereas Dublin looked like they probably could have kept going, as I say, for another 15, 20 minutes, no bother, at the same pace. Like, McCaffrey is just absolutely unbelievable at the moment. Like, he's scarily good. And actually, as an opposition team, you actually have to sacrifice someone. I would actually just have someone mark him. I'd say, listen, don't worry about getting the ball. Just make sure he doesn't get it.
Like, I was just thinking about that myself, and we've kind of come up with every superlative under the sun for Jack McCaffrey over the last couple of years. He's still only 25 years of age. You have to consider him as the best half-back that Dublin have ever produced at this point. If not, you could go greater to backs in general, or players in general at this point.
The guy, he plays the game with there's nothing nasty about him. There's nothing arrogant about him. He does his job. He goes, he flicks the ball over the bar, he turns around, he runs back, and he might even, and he doesn't tap a lad to say, listen, I just did that to you. He actually kind of, I don't know what it is about it. He's a very humble kind of character. But he is absolutely, like, I'd say he's close to being a top player in the country at the moment. He's definitely in the top three. And I probably can't see anyone better than him. Like, I mean, what he does when he injects that bit of pace, but it's not only even his pace, it's his willingness to work back. Like, he works back and he chases fellas back down and he covers runs, and he goes forward for goals. Then straight away he turns and he's off, and he's covering off fellas, and he's just, his willingness, his desire, his brain. He doesn't take stupid shots. He gets into areas where he knows his limitations, and he looks to offload the ball. Like, he clipped one really bad wide with his right foot, and you could kind of see him after it, like, saying, Jesus, I shouldn't have done that, kind of thing. But he actually looked for the past 2 or 3 occasions, and there was no one there, and he ended up kind of clipping it, trying to shoot it over himself, and clipped it wide. But he is, he's just unbelievable, and he is actually, like, apart from all the threats, Howard was really, really good. Like, he was phenomenal. Cork couldn't handle him either. And in Howard and himself, they have two guys that actually deserve. You nearly have to man mark them. You have to say, right, we're going to try to at least man mark these guys, because it's unfortunately for a lot of teams. And Cork matched up well. Cork went man to man. They said, right, we're going to get scores because we're going to be man on man with you, and you're going to get scores on us, and then we'll see how it pans out. And they got some great scores. They could have had more scores. They needed a few more goals when they had opportunities. But ultimately, that man-to-man press that they were trying, really takes it out of the legs. And unless, as I say, you're conditioned to do that for 80, 90 minutes against a top team like Dublin, it's going to catch up on you, and catch up on them. It did.
So obviously the big story from the weekend, from a Dublin perspective, from a GA perspective perhaps, was not just the result on Saturday night. It was the confirmation from Jim Gavin that Diarmuid Connolly is back in training with the Dublin senior football team. It's going to be a situation, I presume, Anthony, where he comes in on the bench and he might come off the bench. What does this tell you about the way Jim Gavin is thinking? Is he unhappy with what he currently has at his disposal?
Yeah, it's a strange one, Owen. Like, I mean, I saw everyone quite a kerfuffle about it yesterday. It is an odd one. If he gets his visa sorted out, he goes to America, right? So if I'm on that panel and I'm working away, if I'm Bernard Brogan and I'm getting myself back from my injuries and I'm working hard and I'm doing a serious amount of stuff on my own to get back, and I'm really, really, really pushing, and then a guy comes back onto the panel, albeit, of course, that he is the player that he is, and he's been there, and he's won things for them, and he has massively helped them win things. But, his first choice this year was to go to the States. So he comes back into the panel. I'm kind of surprised by it. I didn't think Gavin would be, I didn't think this would be something that he would go for. I thought he obviously would speak to him before the potential America trip and say, listen, you have a choice here. You either go there or you come back in with us, and we'll welcome you back with open arms. I don't know if that conversation happened, but I would have felt that probably would be the natural conversation that would happen. Now, it's not like he didn't decide to go. He was going. And just through the visa mess up, of course, he ends up coming back to play with them. Does it mean that he's worried about his panel? It possibly does. I'm not really seeing, people are talking about the impact off the bench. It's a lot of the guys that have been there before. O'Gara hasn't even been used. Bernard Brogan hasn't even been on the subs. McMenamin's been okay. Dean Rock has probably been the one who's come in, but he's very like for like with Costello. Yes, he comes on when teams are 15, 20 minutes to go. Teams are tiring. Teams are fouling. He sticks the ball over the bar. But I'm not really seeing a massively, fresh, new impact. And also a guy who can spray those balls, who can pass those balls from 50, 60, 70 yards out, which Connolly can do. He gives them something completely different in the lineup. Scully doesn't really do it. Howard doesn't really do it. So, you can imagine as a tired team, with 20 minutes to go, this guy comes off the bench and he now has an ability to ping a ball, onto a guy's chest from 40 or 50 metres already into a tired or a defence that isn't set up defensively. So in other words, a team that's now trying to chase the game. So in other words, there's lots of space in their own backline and he's coming in and trying to expose that. That's quite a scary proposition. My only question mark would be over the impact it has on the panel, and the impact which I think you're alluding to, which is the message that goes out to the rest of the panel from Jim Gavin and his team.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but it's one hell of an option to have all the same if he does make that bench. Listen, Anthony, thanks a million for taking the call this morning.
No bother on. Talk to you soon.